Welcome to Rocket Ship, the podcast where web developers learn the skills and secrets to ship awesome mobile apps. I'm Simon Grimm, creator of Galaxies.dev, and today's guest is Nate Wienert, who is with me, although we had many technical issues about the date, the microphone, everything else. So Nate, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Nate is, for those of you who don't know it, the creator of Tamagui, which is one of the probably hottest packages around React Native and creating universal applications. Actually, in one of the videos I did, I think I put place Tamagui in place one of the frameworks you should keep an eye on, or the styling libraries. And people already asked me, like, oh, what did they pay you from Tamagui? And I'm like, what? It's just good. They paid me nothing. So I'm happy to talk about everything Tamagui, cross-platform routing, and why people should care about it. But before we get into that, I would really love to know a bit more about you, Nate. So you are online kind of like the Tamagui guy, but there's definitely a backstory. So what's your backstory and how did you arrive at Tamagui? I think you had some other failed projects before, is that right?
Oh yeah. The road to Tamagui, I mean, I don't know where it exactly starts because I feel like I was just doing like lots of different things with React at certain different points, I guess, like different projects on it or with it or like dev tools around it. And then at some point during the pandemic, actually, I sort of like had a UI kit that I had built before that had an optimizing compiler. It was web only, and it had like run into some like issues with the design of it, I think, over time that I just like I tried adding a feature once, I think that I thought was necessary, and it just didn't like really work with the way it was structured. So it was like became a giant, like I got deep into that feature, like trying to rework everything. It was one of those things that kept unrolling, and I was like, okay, I have to redo like the styling engine. It wasn't Atomic actually at the time. Anyway, so needless to say, I've been doing some form of this or another for a while, but I was working on a project that was kind of like, it was meant to be, or like still is, I guess. It's kind of like what Tamagui was born out of. And it was just like, I was trying to do a fun take, and still am, I guess, trying to just like kind of come up with like a really fun way to kind of like list places that you really like and rank them by something not like a restaurant necessarily, but could be like dish or like one facet or something that they have, like coffee or, something like that. So it's like a listing app, but like make it different. It sounds like, I just think there's a lot of apps now that are actually doing different versions of this, which is cool to see. Like, I think definitely there's some people want some good social thing.
Pinterest board of your special memories and places.
Yeah, like Yelp, but more like on the map. But yeah, like a fun Foursquare, maybe bringing back the vibe of Foursquare or something like that. I don't know. But anyways, it was pandemic, and I was just like burnt out from doing a bunch of startup stuff, and was working on this project just for fun, essentially. And then I had to get a job, so I was like, I'm not going to finish this project, but I can probably open source the UI kit that I've been working on. So that's kind of the genesis of it.
That's still a pity. Like, when I learned about Tamagui and I heard you on the Syntax FM podcast, I was like, wow, this guy is really deep into Tamagui and doing awesome things. And then I learned that, oh, you're actually working a full-time job and just doing this on the side, right?
Oh yeah. It's well, but it's a little bit of cheating because like it's on the side, but the first year of it was, or like, I was working on this app during the pandemic, but I mean, I was working on that basically full time, and Tamagui was like a good chunk of building that app. So like, I mean, it definitely like, yeah, it's gone way up in the last year and a half, I guess. Like, for sure has been a lot more of my free time on it. But yeah, it's mostly a side project. I mean, I've got like a regular sort of like, I guess, employee. I got like like we collaborate, I guess, sort of like co-founder, I guess, type guy. And he's awesome. And so he's been as huge help actually after like 1.0, just because it was overwhelming, the amount of like incoming. I mean, like all 1.0s, I think all good front end 1.0s, I guess you do it when it's really like 0.7 or something, and hope that like you don't get too much bad press. And so.
Yeah, it was kind of hard to overlook Tamagui simply because it has such a great UI. So for everyone not knowing about it, just check it out on the web. It looks like, I'm catching a Pokemon or something on the website. There was a relation to it, I guess. But for those who've never heard about Tamagui, could you quickly describe what it actually is? Because I think it's more than just a styling library.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like from UI, I guess, down or something. There's a component kit that's if you're familiar with radix, it's very similar. Um, it adapts to native though, so it has this cool adapt component. Then you can nest another component inside and then tell it when it needs to adapt, and it'll flip between the two, which is pretty cool because I think that's like the big difference between what like something like radix supports, where it's mostly desktop and the mobile web. I mean, I guess they could. It'd be cool if they had that. But anyways, it's got the component kit, and then it's kind of got this main part that is makes I think it possible, which is like the optimizing compiler, which is pretty cool. And it's just, if there's like this trade-off that you run into if you're doing a universal app like React Native and web, which is that first it's just that it doesn't feel as elegant. You have to write like press event and set state and then press style, right? And then you have a style sheet at the bottom, and you have to like name it and then link that, and you're jumping back and forth. And if you're coming from like the web world, it's, you're just literally just like instantly changing, especially something like Svelte, where, that's kind of like where if you have a good React setup, you have it set up very inline styles, Tailwind, whatever. And you're used to that very clean and fast, like feeling of just like inline styles or whatever. You can change things very quickly. So it feels very clunky. Media queries were another one. And so you abstract it and you build up these like abstractions for it, but then your app's slower. Like the more you do that, the slower your app gets, because you're adding all these hooks and you're adding all this like logic inside of your components, and you're using those components everywhere.
Yeah.
For every, it's everywhere. It's like every single view is using many of them. So it really matters at the edges like that. So the optimizing compiler tries to basically remove itself. Like even the styled views that you create, it doesn't like compile down to say like a styled view that's optimized. It's compiling on the web to a div element in your React tree with like a class name, and then it's just pulling CSS out, and it evaluates logic and stuff too, which kind of makes it cool because it means you can just like do like spreads or like ternaries in your like style objects and stuff like that. And so it's cool. Yeah, like it basically, like there's this dilemma, I think, where if you're sharing a bunch of code and you have a lot of nice abstractions, you're just inherently trading off for performance. And so it's trying to like tip that balance back. And so yeah, it's been a lot of work. It's a lot. Like it's like, oh, what is Tamagui? But I just say it's three things, like UI, style library, and optimizing compiler.
Yeah, so I made the question up front, like, what's the difference between Tamagui and these other packages like React Native Paper or GlueStack or the other that come out? So mostly these other are just the UI part, and Tamagui is on top having the optimized compiler. Is that like the big differentiator between your project and those other projects?
Well, I think there's like lots of differences between them. I think like if you're talking about like a big fundamental difference, like that's probably probably one of the main ones. Yeah, I mean, I think they have different like feature sets and all this stuff that's interesting, but yeah, that's a lot already. So yeah, like the optimizing compiler for sure is the novelty. I think like you can make a claim that like there's a lot of other interesting parts, like the animations plugins, the way you can like swap out drivers and compile to CSS or whatever, and theme system I think is pretty cool. But like I think those are novel, and there's cool stuff on top of Tamagui. But yeah, like that's
definitely want to get back to the animation and the adapters later as well. And by the way, what you said about the press state, I just came across this like last week. I was preparing a stream and I want to use like Expo Router and for the web and just have a button with a hover effect, and I was like, it can't be that hard, but it actually was. Like I asked on Twitter if there's any good solution, but there's just like use a pressable and then have a state, and when it changes, you change the styling. Like it was so unbelievable complicated. I was like, that can't be, like it's 2023 and I'm doing this and people are like creating Unity landscapes with AI. Like this can't be true. So yeah, I definitely see the need for something better.
And there are like, again, like a lot of the libraries make it nicer, but yeah, it's my goal. The thing that I wanted to do was make it feel good. Like my web app felt terrible because I built this big app in it, and it was getting slower and slower. And like, it's just frustrating to run into those limits, like where you're moving slower and then you abstract it and it's like, yeah, so it's just that constant trade-off is annoying. So just trying to fix.
So the other week I tried it out. I tried Tamagui, and the first thing that I noticed is that it's actually a lot harder to set it up. So if I go through the getting started guide, it's not like install this, import this, use this component, and boom, you have your hello world, which is like the typical flow in pretty much every framework or package you use. But for Tamagui, it's like kind of complicated to set up like a configuration, and then you have to do this, and then you have to do, like, why is that required, and will this maybe get better in the future?
It's a good question. I mean, it's great. It's a great point. I think it may just even just be the doc's fault, like because there are these getting started guides. Like I think you can just you just install Tamagui config, right? And then just like it's one line of config and one line of providing it at the root and or basically with the imports and everything. But it's like there's a very simple flow that I think is there. But if you are going to customize it, which I think the docs do a bad job of like making it seem like you need to customize and like set up your own design system from the start, which you absolutely don't. You can just import config from Tamagui config, pass it in, and like you've got like a really nice complete setup. So yeah, I think our docs are definitely lacking. Like I said, it's not like it's something we should definitely spend more time on because we've spent so much time on everything else. So it's like worth getting that to be very like simple. But yeah, I think we've improved a few things too very recently. Like there's no more setup in terms of like build or anything like at all. So that actually just happened recently. So I don't know how recently you played with it, but that gets rid of all the complication for setup. So it's kind of nice.
Nice, yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well. So you upfront also told me that you also used Cordova in the past, just like I did, and Capacitor, and you probably also know about Ionic in that case, or the other libraries out there. And my question was always like, why is there no Ionic for React Native? Because if you know Ionic, or people who don't know it, Ionic brings like components like a toolbar, a button, a list, a card, and all these components, and they adapt to like iOS or Android styling, and they pretty much just work everywhere. So what was some library like that a bit of an inspiration for Tamagui as well, to have like a great set of components? Or is this something you might expand to in the future, to have even more components that like feel really native and also work on the web?
Oh yeah, I mean, I mean that's the goal, right? It's like there should be a lot of libraries, I guess, that do that. I do feel like there are some. I mean, there's no great ones on. Yeah, like the nice thing that Cordova and Ionic did, and I didn't even know. I thought they were the same company that they renamed or something, but I don't know. It's not really.
Yeah,
I mean, I haven't been in that world for a while.
Cordova
So.
is in the Apache Foundation or something, or it became open source. Like it was
Oh,
also
okay.
PhoneGap and then Cordova, and Ionic created Capacitor. So Capacitor is like the evolution of Cordova. But yeah, that whole topic is getting complicated. I mean, there are different ways to build. You share more code actually with Capacitor than if you do like a React web project and then a React Native mobile application. But yeah, they serve a different purpose. But that brings me also to the question like, okay, so Tamagui for React Native, and you actually said in one of the podcasts I listened to that it also works great just for one platform. So if I only want to build a React Native app, and I'm actually not really interested in web, would Tamagui still be a great option in that case?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I definitely think that I think for native, it's actually almost the stronger case. Like I have a hard time cracking into web as much because the web libraries go so, they go deep into CSS stuff and like zero runtime and all this stuff. But I'll say for native, definitely. Like I think for native only, maybe I would definitely choose it. I mean, I think it's the strong, like I don't think there's any downside really that it supports web because all the web code is basically based off the React Native APIs and you get the optimizing compiler. It doesn't do as much. So the optimizing compiler is much better on the web, but like that doesn't, like, I mean, it's just native is still like the kind of the best maybe platform it supports in terms of everything. So yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. We're trying to get better at web. Like the website is more valid. Like I think that there's no reason that it's not like the best web site library. I think it is for a lot of cases, but it's still not for like some of the cases where like you really want zero runtime and very, very light. Like the web library is I think 20 kilobytes, or maybe even slightly under that. If we put a little effort into it, it's really not bad. But there's some people. I think that like the CSS support too would maybe be the second thing, like getting full CSS support as an option. So like we're kind of working on like a plugin type idea. Like we're trying to get. I mean, plugins are always a very dangerous road to go down because they can be very like complicated to support and slow things down. But some very simple system where we can let people control kind of the props that it takes and how it processes them. And so I think that with that in place, we could have like a Tailwind, syntax support, which is already doable now, I think, if you were to put the effort into it, but it would be a little clunky. Like it wouldn't like work as like it'd be hard to type it, and then it'd be hard to like get it, to be perfect and like optimize as well. But like you could do it now, but try and make that easy so that, yeah, if you wanted to really just plug web in only, you could do like a zero runtime mode and actually like have like full CSS support. And then if you wanted to, you'd have to like change things out, or like, you basically get the web support as on equal terms with maybe like the best
Yeah,
zero runtime.
I
Although
think.
there are some downsides, which is interesting. Like I don't think people realize you can't do a lot of things. Like you can't access your theme in a hook, per se, like if it's changing or something over time, right? If you're switching, maybe you
Mhm.
can, I guess, in the simple cases, but like accessing your token values dynamically and passing them out and stuff like that is like, I guess they have pretty simple theme system. So it's really just the theme system that really gets like and animations, I guess. Like if you need a passive value into JavaScript that's changing over time, sometimes animations make it hard to have like a zero runtime component.
Yeah, so
Or
CSS support
spreading
is
props actually too would be the big one, like spreading props down.
CSS support is definitely interesting because the other day when I tried Expo, they kind of got this working with Expo for web. Is there like a challenge between libraries, which is like the best in making the most advancements? Because it feels like you kind of want to do the same. Like you want to support CSS, and Expo for the web wants to support CSS. At the end, I asked myself, like, should I just use Expo and CSS for the web, or should I use Tamagui? I know you're a big fan of compiling this into a mono repository and then have Next.js application and Solito. And I always ask myself, like, where does Expo for the web fit into this? Because they are working heavily on this as well, and like with the new Expo router and stuff. Like, what's your take on the whole like what's the best setup basically?
Oh no, I mean I think I don't love the mono repo. Like I mean I think it's just the best that we have currently. Like I don't think, I mean, Expo Web is great. It's the idea that I've been wanting to build myself for a long time. So like it's cool to see them do it. Like I was, there was multiple weekends where I was like, gosh, should I work on like a file system router for the web, because I really want it, but like I know it's a nightmare. And I even looked, I would even start looking at like other projects and kind of get a feel for it, mapping out what I was going to do. But no, I think that's the right strategy. It's just it's very early still. I think they've made a lot of progress, but it wasn't like fully production ready. Still, I guess they haven't even announced like the full, but it'll be soon. I think it'll be soon, and I think it's a good strategy. I mean, so I just think that like, yeah, in terms of feature set and like web support, like you're just getting much more currently from Next. But the ideal world is to have one stack, I think, and not to even require a mono repo. I mean, that should be something that you add on once your project gets to a certain size, I think, if you need it, and just throw some packages in like a subfolder. But yeah, so I mean, I want to. I mean, it should work with Tamagui. I think some people have configuration issues just because like they have their own custom Webpack setup. You have to figure out how to like get it to plug in properly and all that. But I'm sure that'll work in time. I mean, I have some ideas. Like I want to play with like a stack that I've been wanting for a long time, and I'll probably use Expo Router for it. So it'll have a lot of the same APIs there, but I think there's like differences. So I'll probably figure out my own setup
What's
and
the
maybe
stack you want to use or you would use?
well, I've got a Vite conf talk coming out, which is yeah, the 8th. So I don't know, when does this
Maybe it already happened.
oh, okay. Yeah, so like potentially around now, but basically I'm working on like a Vite for React Native. I mean, I've tweeted about it, but like I got it mostly working with like Expo Router, and so basically, yeah, you have Vite serving React Native and web, and in the same process, like same bundler, same instance.
Oh,
So it's
nice.
pretty cool, and it sends hot updates at the same time to both of them. So you can like run one stack, and then I'm using import.meta.glob, the like built-in Vite feature that lets you like glob a file system folder and then passes it in as like for your routes. And then I passed that into the Expo Router source code and got it
Huh.
like sort of working. So it's kind of cool. So like that's my dream. And then that's just the back. Like, I mean, I want one bundler because like it's a nightmare already dealing with one bundler. So like you don't need two nightmares. And also like, you know, like a lot of this work actually started months ago, and like before even, I think Metro is really they're picking up their support. Supposedly they sort of like were stagnant for a while. I mean, just probably due to Meta's investment, not due to like their developers or anything. Um, but yeah, I mean, it just felt like they had like the number two issue on the repo was like, I forget what it was, if it was like asset imports or dynamic imports or something like that, and like it had been there for like 4 years or something at some point, or I don't know, 3 years, but um, and like, yeah, for the web, you need really good code splitting. You need really good like asset handling, you need good optimization, like you want SSR mode, so you need some sort of control over that, and so yeah, like it just that like the V was on my mind ever since I wrote the Tamagui plugin for it because I really liked it so much. So I got that mostly working. Like it's legitimate too. Like there was a lot of work to get like common JS bundling. But yeah, but it's not just that. Like I think my other like issue is like kind of with like how data fetching is done. Like I don't think we have a really good data solution. Like in terms of like I'm like for native apps, for apps that you want like to have like I don't know if you've used Swift UI or anything like this. Like when you use like a local sort of like data source or whatever, Firebase even parse or I don't know what's new. But basically you generally just have this like query that's like a real-time query, and if you sort something, it's sorting, and it's like you just use the native constructs of the language for the most part to like do things like or at most like a put or whatever, insert, whatever, sort of like some very straightforward syntax, and you need that like real-time offline for a lot of apps. I think you need like that feedback, even if you're just sorting a list, like any social app, any crypto wallet, any AI chat app, like you want that real-time, easy to work with data. So like I think most apps, and so yeah, like I just think there's something potentially with like I used GQT for my app that I built that Tamagui was born out of. We made GQT. It was a fork of GQless, which is this GraphQL library that this young genius like wrote, and then kind of like he moved on to other genius things, and he just like it was amazing. Like the idea is really great, like and it has some really interesting upsides, and basically you just use query and then like your whole typed graph is there. There's some other libraries now that I think are doing it actually, and there's been some that have come like even generative. They generate like a query builder, but this one's like inline in your render function. There's no string. You can map over users. Like you do a query like query.users. You pass like it's a function. You pass it some arguments, right? Like filters and limits and all that, right? And then you map over those users in React, and then you like return. You pass that user into like a subcomponent, right? And then in that subcomponent, you just call like user.name, right? Or user.avatar. And it generates the GraphQL query, like from reading that. It's a proxy basically that goes all the way down your tree. And it builds the GraphQL query and then calls it for you. And what's cool is that it does the optimizations that like the fancy Relay compiler does, which is like, it resolves your entire tree in one pass and passes one big GraphQL query, and you do it without any, I mean, the syntax is as good as it gets. It's so nice. You can literally abstract your components out, like it works so well with composition where you don't have to think about splitting your query up into like parts or whatever. You're just like, you pass a user object down and that component takes the same type as your graph. So we had this, I should have grabbed the water. We had a Sura set up with this, and I loved it. I mean, it just was like, we were flying, and the performance, every time the performance got bad, which happened many times, because you're building an app and it just happens all the time. And almost like 3 out of 4 times it would be that we somehow just triggered like some sort of delayed render that meant that we weren't fetching that whole page in one pass. We were triggering 2 passes or 3 passes or something like that, right? Like depending on the bug. And it would like double the response time. So it would go from like, maybe a complex page would be 400 milliseconds, and then it would be 800 or 1200. And you'd be like, why does it feel like the entire app feels terrible? Like the second it goes from 400 to 1000, you're like, I can't use this app. It's like, it's garbage. Like obviously you would cache a lot of these, but still it's like, you're going to hit fresh stuff on a lot of different apps. So anyways, that was kind of like the cool part was like, we were using it. It was so simple to use. It was giving us incredible performance. And then like, you could also tell that like, if you didn't get that full pass, I mean, this is Postgres too. So like there's different strategies, but I think it's nice. Like, so I think there's a graph file system routes maybe type thing where like, file system routes made routing a lot easier. I think if you had a graph folder, you could drop functions, and there's a library called grats, grats.caps.dev or something like that. It's we'll have to look it up or something and put a link.
Gonna put it in the notes. Yeah.
Yeah. But they did a really cool job of like, almost like full on reads your TypeScript types. You export function with TypeScript types, and then you put like comments to like annotate the GraphQL fields and stuff, and then it just turns that into your GraphQL query. But I think that you could go further with that and do like a really cool one where like you don't have to annotate with comments because there's a file system convention, so it just knows that if you're exporting a function in graph/user/ full name, you can just like drop a function in, takes the user object, returns. And so I think you'd have this amazing, like, I think that experience would be so cool. Like I've been wanting that stack for so long since I started playing with GQt. And Hasura is like, we use Hasura. I don't know. I wish I knew, like, if you know, like, I still think that there's like not a great sort of like database that auto GraphQLs and like gives you like, I think Supabase shows a lot of promise, but last I checked, which was like a long time ago, granted, was their like GraphQL library was a lot less mature than like Hasura or PostGraphQL or whatever. So.
I haven't tried that one yet. I'm not super deep into GraphQL, so
yeah.
all of this sounds definitely interesting. And I'm
the thing is, neither
am
am I. Like I think GraphQL, it put me off. Like I thought it was too complicated and too much over engineering. Like the thing is, like I'm not even a GraphQL developer. I just like Hasura because I was like, you just click, you make a database, you click, you create all your rows, you create your schema, or you run, code or whatever. You just run your schema, and then you just like have this API automatically, like, and you can like add functions and like that's nice. Like I just think it's really nice to do that. So, but I will say, like, yeah, even if you're not in the GraphQL world, I think GQt is kind of cool for that reason, that it doesn't feel like it.
Definitely gonna put this in the notes. Which also brings me to you mentioned it quickly, Supabase. And I was very pleased because I kind of like Supabase. I'm a big fan of Supabase. That you used it in Takeout. So Takeout was your first attempt to monetize Tamagui. Could I say it like that? I don't know. But it's a product and kind of your opinionated stack with Tamagui. I think it's using Next.js and Solito, and that's why I got the impression from that, like. This repository or this setup is like your preferred way, but I now heard that it's just you think that this is the best we currently have. But could you share a few details about what Takeout is and why it's awesome?
Yeah. I mean, not to anti-sell myself, like I do think it is the best way that is currently. I want to like migrate it eventually to some of this new stuff if I can pull it off. But what it is today is like I mean, it's been a ton of work for Tamagui, and a lot of it was just for fun. I mean, again, a lot of it was I was building my own app, and then I was open sourcing it. I thought it was kind of fun, and then like eventually you have to like, okay, it's got to be sustainable. So, yeah, we had different projects that we were sort of interested in, and I just think this is the most asked for, and also the most like it's most practical. I think like it because there's so much work that you do to start an app, and that's also a lot of the least interesting work. And like just most frustrating work, like setting up auth, setting up all the different screens, setting screen, account screens, profile screens, the routing, the user feed, the like the little tray that drops down or whatever for like different things that you want to show. Getting like, and like with React Native, it can be a lot too, like getting all the right libraries. You often have like, splash screen and all these native things that you want to set up nicely and load fonts before you hide the splash screen and support dark mode and like it's just like it never ends. You know how it is, and it's like so it's like obvious that like if we can just put together a starter there, I thought like could be good, and that's what it is. I mean, yeah, and I'm pleasantly surprised actually. Like honestly, I don't know. I mean, like not a lot of people. There's a lot of great open source starters, like there really is.
Yes.
And I think the universal app angle it definitely like makes it. I think what makes it work because there is so much more kind of like setup to like get a truly good universal setup going.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it like justified itself, but like because I don't think there was much. I mean, I think there's probably some out there that do exist, but I don't think they go very far and really try and like stay and get like a lot of the great libraries all together, like reanimated and all this stuff. Like I don't know if there's some good starters, but like yeah, it seemed lacking for sure. And if I was going to start a project, it's like it's nice to have something that you could like skip the first whatever. I don't want to, try and make it sound good, but you can skip a while,
Yeah, definitely a lot of hours. I've started many side projects as well, and this one definitely looks like one of the best starters I've seen so far, as it includes like a really good-looking native and also an app and also a good-looking website. You just mentioned it. Is it using reanimated, and does it like include some sort of animation stuff as well?
Yeah, it's set up with the Modi driver, which is the reanimated driver. Basically, Fernando wrote a nice like interface on top of reanimated that made it like so you could just use a hook and do very simple syntax, and it just happened to be very close to the syntax that Tamagui already had for animations. So we had a reanimated driver originally that was like handwritten, and then it was actually much nicer to just like leverage that, and it's a nice light library. So our driver is driven by Modi. but yeah, it's set up, and then you get like pretty decent animations like built into Tamagui. Like you can do a lot of stuff that's actually quite frustrating. I think usually like presence animations, especially, like that's kind of the cool thing. I think that you can do some pretty interesting like inter-exit animations, which are super common. Like, building the UI kit, I felt like I had to do them. Just like how are you going to build a popover or a dialogue without having an exit animation that's very clean? So I almost felt like my hand was forced to like figure it out. And but yeah, I mean it's I'm a big fan. Like reanimated can be a little bit tricky to set up too, right? It's one of those things where like Babel
Yes.
plugin and et cetera, et cetera. So, but yeah, it works. And I definitely would like to like, I think there's a lot of room for cool stuff there. Like we could get timeline almost like, or at least looping, but like also have some control where you can move between. Like we don't have much of that into Tamagui, but I don't see why not. Like that's actually relatively not as complex as getting all of it to work in the first place. Like now most of the drivers, I think Modi even has some simple. Um, oh, you froze for a second. Okay, cool. Yeah, but yeah, so it's there. Yeah, long
Yeah,
answer.
yeah. I had the other week Catalin on the podcast as well, where we talked about
Oh yeah,
reanimated, and he also introduced me to Moti, and yeah, and I also want to bring on Fernando because he
nice.
has like also all these great packages. So it's a small community. Like everything kind of ties into each other, and everyone's like supporting each other. That feels really great about the React Native ecosystem right now. So yeah,
Mhm.
animations with Tamagui are also perfectly fine and working.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I like the community a lot. Like it was really fun to go to App.js actually. That was cool. Like meet a
Oh
lot of
yeah, yeah. I
people.
think that
Yeah,
yeah he mentioned I think app.js and meeting you there,
yeah, yeah. We hung out. It was cool.
which
Yeah.
was kind of long travel. Given you're based in Hawaii, is that correct?
It was an absolute nightmare. Like it was on the way there. I think it was like almost 30 hours. Like it was 28 hours of
Oh,
travel or something like that. It was wild. And then I got delayed on the way back, so I actually like ended up staying an extra night on the way back. And yeah, it was wild. Because we're exactly 12 hours off, and then
yeah.
it's hard to get a flight that's better than like two stops to Poland. Because like Poland's not like necessary. I mean, you definitely can, but like it was just much easier to find two
Yeah,
stop flights,
probably
and
fly
that
to like yeah, like London or Frankfurt or something.
I think I was stuck. We were stuck on the runway for 2 hours on the leg
Oh
to
no.
Poland, and there was no air conditioning. I was dying. I was literally
Oh,
23 or 4 hours in to traveling or something like 23 hours, and
oh.
stuck on the runway for 2 hours without air conditioning. I was literally going insane. But yeah, I had a great time in Poland. All right, like it was, yeah, I
Well,
really loved it there. It was maybe because of the flight, it was so bad. It was like by the time I got there, I was so happy just to be in civilization. But it's really cool there. I actually had a great time. So
yeah, I definitely will try to be there next time as well. We're running a bit out of time, so I want to have one last question for or about Tamagui. So I always love to know like what's coming in the future. Currently, I think you already posted. I think this is already live, like zero config. That should already work for Tamagui. But what's next? What are your plans for the next version?
yeah, we're sort of like working on a lot of things at once. I mean, I think we've been trying to just get it as stable and like easy as possible. Like we're trying to reduce the amount of work that we have to do just by answering questions and stuff by just like covering all of our bases, like improving everything fundamentals a lot. And then I think it's been paying off. Like we've just been moving through like bugs. Like I think the issue tracker got up to like 70 a few times and we got it down to 30, and then you look away for like a day and it goes back up, but we've been keeping it down. Like I'm actually pretty proud of that. So but yeah, what's next? Like, I guess that's not as exciting, but that has been like, it's been nice to get it it's cool to have it feel, like not like a liability, at all anymore. Like, I know that it works and like all the features are there and like pretty solid, and like even, cause like, I think like Bun's going through this right now, but it's like, everything's there, but like, that like it falls apart in 100 different ways. And like, it definitely was there at one point, but now it feels a lot cooler. So we've been working on like new stuff. We've been working on um, a few things. Like we're slowly getting to more of a fully headless setup. I don't think that's as exciting. Actually, it's not. We already have unstyled, so like it's not that big of a deal. But I think it's cool. Like a lot of people want like fully headless, no styles included. Just do what you want. The studio is obviously, I think, one of the more exciting things. Like I'm so close to having it ready to where like we can start posting like really cool demo videos. I keep wanting to wait a little bit because it's like it's really cool now, finally. Like it got to that point where it's like, oh wow, I can really play with themes and like I've come up with some cool themes, like very like unique looking. But
Hmm.
it's one of those things where it's like I know if I wait like just a little bit longer because there's like a couple little things that we can tweak to get like themes to be like I can put together like a really cool demo. So it's very close. I think Studio is very close, and it's mostly like like a theme builder. But because the Tamagui theme system is so strong, like it's really like you can change the whole look and feel of the interface. Like you can have very contrasty borders or like bigger fonts and like all sorts of stuff. I mean, the font stuff is still early, but like you can really play with the interface and go from like a outline type theme to like a 3D, more like, shadowy, whatever. Like you can go all across all sorts of stuff. So it's pretty cool to play with. And I think we're just rolling it out to like the top sponsors now and getting feedback from them. And so that's been good. And then hopefully that'll be like out soon. That's another sort of thing where I think we'll have like I think it'll be cheap actually, but I think that we'll try and do like a sort of like we're trying to figure out how to do it. I don't know exactly how we're going to do it, but like there definitely should be a thing where you can like at least generate a theme or choose from like maybe some cool themes that we've put together and like play with it a bit, and then maybe get some value out of it until you're ready. Like we'll try and figure out
Nice.
something good.
Nice.
But other than that, I know we're running out of time, but I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of I feel like we have a lot of interesting projects going on, but some cool new components for sure. Like that's kind of exciting. Like I think
Nice.
like menus that do a
Oh,
really good
cool.
job. I think those will be very cool. Those are in progress. Yeah, like a variety of components, I guess, that would go on top of that. I think and then Studio also has like a bunch of pre-made. So like one of the steps is that you see a bunch of pre-made stuff to see how it all looks, and there's a bunch of them at this point, which is cool. So it seems like a natural direction too to get a bunch of like copy paste examples that you can just like different like widget type things, I guess, go in that direction. So that would be cool. I mean,
Uh,
I think there's cooler stuff. Like the stack stuff is where I'm like also very excited. Like it's very exciting, but that's like fun week. That feels like my new weekend project. It's not like it's not actually
That's
there
good.
yet. And there's so much on the Tamagui side. Like yeah, there's quite a bit more. But I think those are the big things.
Nice. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to all of this. I'm going to put the links in the show notes to both Takeout and Studio. It's probably not yet live when the episode goes live, but people can already sponsor early access. Or if it's live, if you watch this later or listen to it later, then just join.
Yeah.
So, Nate, this was awesome. Thank you for a quick look into Tamagui, into the heart of the creator of Tamagui. Where can people find out more about you and your projects?
Tamagui.dev. Yeah, and thank you so much, Simon. I had a great time chatting, so appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. And if you want to check out more React Native courses, and probably I'm going to do a Tamagui course soon as well because people asked about it. You can find this on galaxies.dev, where I already have many React Native courses about Expo, and I think soon one about Tamagui as well. So thanks, Nate. I will probably bring you back in the future when we have the next iteration of Tamagui and Studio ready. So for now, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.